Hey guys, welcome to our panel today. We've got everybody adding their webcams now and we're going to get started. My name is Jennifer Mason. I'm going to kind of moderate the panel that we have going today and it's going to be great. I'm trying to get my computer to stop making binging noises at me. If y'all can hear that. Um, We're going to get started and talk about no-code solutions, why they matter, how we can build them, what we can do with them. So just as a way of introduction, my name is Jennifer Mason. I like to tell people that I'm allergic to syntax and semicolons. So anything you can do with SharePoint out of the box is my specialty. So I help people really utilize what you can get out of the box and only out of the box. And so I don't really do any development, just try to build with the tools as much as I can out of the box. So let's start with Ben, and let's kind of do introductions all the way around, and then I am going to pass some questions over to the audience.
Awesome, thank you. My name is Benjamin Nyland, and I just learned what a semicolon is, actually. It's half a colon. I got it. It's the French in me. So yeah, I work for ShareGate, the migration management tool, and I've done SharePoint for quite some time, and I started by being thrown in there actually, and then working around with things like SharePoint Designer and learning HTML a little bit and CSS and trying to provide solutions for whomever I would work with, customers or our own on-premises environment back then. So definitely not a developer either, but always trying to find solutions. Asif?
Wes, why don't
I
you?
thought I had my mic.
Oh, we got it. Beautiful.
Sorry.
Go for it.
Sorry, I thought I had it turned on. Hi, guys. So building on to what Ben was saying, I've also been working with and teaching on and mentoring the no-code solution way for a very long time. My past was from development side, and I used to like semicolons. I still don't hate them, actually. But there's so much you could do these days without semicolons and without compiled programming. I try to teach people to have to understand what you can do without it before you go into it. But don't get me wrong, I'm going to stick to the statement that there is lots of room for developers. But even for developers, I think just like I learned, it's good to know what you can do without it before you go into it.
Awesome. Wes, you want to give us an intro?
Sure. This is Wes Preston, hailing from Minnesota. I also spend the majority of my time working with out-of-the-box solutions. However, I tend to balance them with developers that I'm working with. So I spend a lot of time helping folks understand when they should be using out-of-the-box solutions, when they should start into some of these gray areas that I tend to talk about, and when they should start to incorporate custom solutions. So everyone else has kind of said most of the same stuff, so I'll just leave it at that for now.
Sweet. Well, to get us started, the first question I am going to ask, and I'm going to pass it to Asif because I should be mean and pass it to him last because I know he's got such a good answer, but I'm going to go ahead and let him go first. I'm just kidding. I love teasing Asif. But we're going to talk about what is the role of no-code solutions in the industry and how do they fit into the big scheme of things across developed solutions, non-developed solutions, out-of-the-box solutions. Can you just maybe talk a little bit about, their role in the industry and how you see them fit into things?
Yeah. Most people don't realize that, Jennifer, that if you look at SharePoint Server itself is a solution that was built on top of, the original Windows SharePoint services, right? There's lots of building blocks which the SharePoint platform has provided for many, many years, and SharePoint Server just built on those building blocks to give us the personalization features, the enterprise search features, the My Sites, and everything that you see in SharePoint Server. So if you just think about from that realm, what we have currently in SharePoint are lots of building blocks. And then after that, what you do with those building blocks, those Legos or whatever you want to call it, is up to you. You use a browser to build solutions on top of it. You use things like Ben mentioned, SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, and there's others, Dashboard Designer, reporting services designer anyway. That's definitely the way you should progress from browser to no-code solution, desktop platforms, and then after that go into code. I tell developers especially, if you do want to start with code, then you don't need SharePoint. Honestly, you just need ASP.NET. Just go in there and build everything yourself. But you already have a framework with SharePoint. Use those building blocks, use those Legos, see what you can do without code, then go into code.
Awesome. Wes, what do you think? What's your perspective on this one?
Asif's last statement there is really close to what I generally tell folks. It's, you've purchased, you've invested, you've spent time with this platform that you're bringing in. Let's make use of the stuff that they've already built. Let's talk about, the lists and the views and all the stuff that you can that you can use for your power users and have, folks that don't do coding or have done, crazy stuff with Excel and with Access. Give them the capabilities of using lists and views and see what they can do with that, because a lot of times they can get that whole, the 80% of the way without having to even think about code. As long as, again, they understand where those lines are and where the capabilities are. I can take it this far, and after that, let's talk about what the options are. But I think that's a great fit. I think the one thing that people tend to ignore or don't think enough about is where skill sets fall into the whole conversation too. It's real easy for us to step back and say, oh, you should do this type of solution with this technology, this type of solution with this technology. But there's another factor in there in terms of what do you have on staff? Do you have folks that are developers? Do you have folks that are comfortable with HTML? Whatever that might be, that should very much play a part in the decision of which tool should I use.
I like to look at it from a perspective of how am I making my life easier? So how am I able to build certain solutions that maybe don't require a developer or don't need someone to go off and spend that extra investment to build? Maybe they're not mission critical. They might be very critical to what I do day to day, but they're not necessarily critical to the overall company. But if we can automate them and improve them, I can go about doing my job better and I can be more efficient with what I have to do. And so I think there's a whole skill set of users that are that power user, someone who, think of somebody that is like really great at Excel, access services. I know people cringe when I say that, but somebody that's got a skill set with that and can really understand the basics of logic and being able to give them building blocks that they can pull together to build out these solutions. I think that's really where the power comes into, because you don't need that specialized skill set of development, as long as you kind of understand the business process behind it and understand what you're trying to do. If we can empower the people who know the business process the best to build out these solutions, we can really build some quick, powerful solutions. So, Ben, what's your perspective and take on all of this?
Honestly, it feels like everything's been said already, but I don't know. I mean, the no-code solution, I think it's good that Asif went and really explained, because that can mean many different things for many different people. And at the end of the day is, are you able to create something that's going to bring value to you or your team or whomever easily? And that could be, I've seen talk about the info path, and you said access services. It could be workflows. It could be anything where you're not, for me, I mean, and again, it depends. But it's not opening things like Visual Studio and learning, whatever, C# or try and code in something that I have no idea how to build. So, but it could mean maybe using HTML to some. It could mean, no, I'm not going into HTML to some. So it's all about providing that value, and that could mean many different ways to bring it. But I think everything that's been said was already spot on, Jennifer.
Awesome. We do have one question in the panel, and I'm pretty sure that this one is going to go to Asif and Wes. But the question was, let me see if I can find it in here. It was about jQuery. Is it better, if you're using SharePoint Online, is it better to use SharePoint Designer than putting jQuery into Pages? An example, putting mega menus on your page for navigation and different things like that. So I see Asif smiling already. So I'm going to kind of pass it over to him and see if he has some insight into this one.
Oh boy. Okay. See, when you're dumping stuff into SharePoint Designer. What you're really doing is you're modifying the database. And sometimes, I'm assuming we're talking about SharePoint 2013 right now. Is that, I don't know if the version was listed in there or not.
The version wasn't listed, but
I think it was SharePoint in the cloud.
Online.
Yeah,
Online.
So it is Office 365, of course, online. So, when you're actually opening up a page, and of course there's no design view in SharePoint Designer 2013, you open up a page, ASPX page, whatever it is. You start making some changes, you're making it in the database. You're not making it in the file system, you're already making it in the database. So first thing, I think people need to understand what you're doing. If that's what you want to do, then there's a lot of management ahead of you to actually manage that code going forward. That's one way. Now the jQuery, I think Wes has more, more hands-on than I do even on jQuery stuff. I don't do as much anymore. Okay, we'll see. But the way I understand it, there's a lot more client kind of management that you're doing instead of doing stuff within the database. So I'm going to go on the limb and say that you probably want to use jQuery more than doing the first way that I described. What do you think, Wes?
Given those two choices, I'd say jQuery. I'd challenge the need though first. In terms of if they're talking about managing menus and managing some of the navigational stuff. What are the needs first before we start throwing jQuery out there? Now, I think the indication is that I'm probably going to talk about CSR and JS Link and things like that because those are things that are in my tool set. But when I guess the other thought I had when I saw jQuery thrown out there already was that make sure you're using a more of a unified approach to it, not just a one-off on every page. Otherwise, again, you're going to have as much of an inconsistency issue as you would with SharePoint Designer.
And I want to just dive in there. Yeah, just want to dive in there quickly. The SharePoint Designer, it's also important to just know, and I know it's lots of talk around this, and I don't want to dive into there, but they already said that they're not really making SharePoint Designer 2016. So it doesn't impact right now. You'll still be able to use SharePoint Designer 2013, but if that's something that they don't find should be in the tool belt anymore because there's going to be other solutions or there is a better solution to do something. Now again, Wes said it very well, look at your need, because I find often, and maybe we'll talk about that later on, but I have developers come in and they custom built a slider when we could use the search results web part or in the display template, which would mean your jQuery for menus, for example. So it's always important to understand why you need it, then what you could use out of the box before you start pulling out other tools or jQuery animations that would be directly in the list of library. But of course, I'm sure the scenario. But always know what's been announced, especially for Office 365 or SharePoint Online's context. That's just what I wanted to add in there.
Yeah, so just to kind of bring the chat room up to par with what we're saying, there was an announcement that there will be no SharePoint Designer 2016, but it will be backwards compatible, so you can use 2013 until they have replacement tools. So kind of we're kind of, my heart just goes sad until we have replacement tools, but they haven't announced what the replacement tools are yet. Don't worry.
I do love how they just dropped that as a non-announcement during the wrap-up session of Ignite.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it was meant to be told.
Yeah. Well, this isn't an announcement.
Somebody
asked. Mark.
Somebody asked in the panel why. Can they ask why? Yes, and we're asking why too. I think that there's.
You want me to take that?
I think that if they're focusing on what works well and enhancing it, and I think we're going to start to see different tools come out from it. They haven't really said a whole lot about it. Asif, did you want to tackle the why for that one?
Yeah, anytime I explain something, I like to go a little bit to the history of what has happened so far, where we are, and where we're potentially going. So for this one also, if you think about it, it still has lots of components and lots of features from the front page days. So those of you who worked the front page 2003, I still see stuff from front page into SharePoint Designer, even though SharePoint Designer was partly built from scratch, more or less. This tool was never really, hate to say this, but it was never really the best performance.
SharePoint Destroyer!
There's a reason that we wrote the book on SharePoint Designer 2007, but nothing on 2013, because it's only the workflow story that's remaining right now. And if you just look at workflow, there's many other better workflow management systems that you can get that does it from the browser, and that's the best way to go anyway. My hope and wish is going to be that we go more towards the browser story, because a tool like SharePoint Designer was never really meant for customizing SharePoint anyway, and that's what people have been using for. But that's how we have gotten to where it is right now. I think it's the right direction. I just hope, like I think Wes was saying, that the announcement about here's where we are going is clearer than just saying that we're dropping this and hey, good luck.
Yep. Well, one question I kind of want to bring up is how does the release of this new thing that they're calling experiences, so under experiences we have groups, we have Delve, we have Infopedia, the People Portal, all of these different things that they talked about at Ignite. So I'll do a quick search and try to find some of the links that we can add to our resource section. But how do you guys see these new experiences fitting into the no-code solution bucket? So I know I'm going to start with Ben, because I know he has a great understanding of groups and some of these different pieces, and I'd love to hear his perspective on it.
Whoa, no, yeah, I'm a big fan of groups, and it's ironic because the first time though I saw the group session and went to groups, I went straight to the product team, and I thought, well, no, and I was completely unhappy because I didn't really see the sort of not a bigger picture, but I thought it was a new product or a new tool, whereas it's more of a way that brings in existing tools. So groups for Office 365 isn't like Word or SharePoint Team Site or Yammer. It's just a layer. They call it the group fabric, in fact, and Christophe, who's doing the keynote tomorrow, has a great slide on it as well, where it really shows as a fabric, something that's underneath and pulls all of these things together. Delve, same thing, uses the Office graph to show you what you have activities from almost everywhere and brings it in together. So what these new experiences are trying to do, and I think I'm very happy about them for a simple reason. A lot of the customers that I would go see, and I don't do necessarily the staying at the doing consulting for 5 months at a customer, but I do go in to listen to the requirements and make sure that then we don't start developing what we don't need to develop that's out of the box. And many times now what I'm listening is, well, our users, they're bypassing us. There's a new concept called rogue IT, which means the business users are actually making themselves IT, and I have a phone ringing. But essentially, let me just there we go.
You just hung up on your mom.
Now, getting back to the experiences before I feel bad about that, I hope you weren't calling. But the idea is really to provide these portals or experiences so that you don't have to go and build it. And the best example is basically the only one that exists right now for me that's complete is the video portal. And now, because I've done video portals for customers, and we had to go build it from scratch, and no code, obviously. We would get the video content type, then we would get the video player, would get them embed, set it up, architecture. Now I just click on subscribe, and we're good to go. It works on all devices and such. So I think the experiences will provide a lot of these solutions. We're seeing new ones like BI, which has a BI designer tool that allows you to create the solution for that as well. So I'm excited to see where all of this is going, and I think that many things that we used to build may have already been available now as experiences. But I don't know, Asif, what do you think about that? I may be going off the topic there a little.
A little bit. Just kidding. I tell people that, and I'm sorry if you guys don't agree with this, let me know if you don't, but I tell people don't get dazzled with just the features. Understand if it's going to fit into your business model and what you're trying to accomplish. For example, video portal, wonderful technology, okay? It has lots of basics and foundational pieces that you would need for a video portal. Are there other vendors out there who do a better job? Yes, but you might not need all those bells and whistles. Understand what you need before you commit to it. Same thing for Delve, same thing for groups. There's lots of good stuff out there, but just because it's out there doesn't mean that you need to use it for your business right now. The best thing to do, in my opinion, to start with is if you have small teams who are using Office 365, let those small teams start to use one or two of these things. See how it behaves, see if they get comfortable, see if you get adoption, see if it's worth maintaining all that stuff, and then roll out that particular thing to a bigger group. Instead of just saying, hey, everybody, it's all open to everybody, and then now you got a mess on your hands. History tells us that the SharePoint under the desk deployment is not the right way to do things, and same thing with these new features, I believe.
I mean, I really like it. I think it's showing a paradigm switch between build it and go to ready to go. And so I think they're actually going in before, so they're building us solutions that are ready to go. Like the video portal, you just kind of click a few buttons and you can configure it the way that it is. It's very set. If you're not going down this exact path of where that solution is going, like Asa said, you might not be able to use it. But if you are, and if it can get you 90% of what you need, it's going to get you 90% of what you need very quickly. And so there's going to be these business decisions that we can make of, okay, is it, ready to go so I can just start using it? That's one of the things I love about groups. If you're struggling with getting people to adapt to team sites and being able to go build the list and libraries that you need, and then you find out that all they're really using is, a document library, task library, calendars, different things like that, then maybe groups is going to be a really good solution that takes very little effort to go. So I agree that I don't think things are fully baked yet, but I think that this concept of ready to go solutions is really where a lot of the out-of-the-box stuff is going in the future. So I'm really excited about the experiences. I'm a big fan of groups. I'm excited about all the changes that came out at Ignite. So looking forward to Christoph's keynote tomorrow where he's going to cover a lot of those things as well. But how about you, Wes? Do you have a feeling about experiences?
Not to oversimplify it, but to me it's just more tools in our tool set, right? I mean, it's understanding what tools are out there, and when someone describes to us what they need for a solution, it's going to point us to a new tool versus an old one that we might have had to build to do the same thing. I'm not totally bought into where they're going to fit yet. I'm still getting used to it because most of my clients haven't moved to the cloud yet, or even hybrid. So I haven't really hammered them as much as I'd like. But the one thing, and I think this kind of aligns with what Ben was talking about, in the past we would talk about all the different sites we would build in an environment, and it would be, team sites and solution sites and different portals for different solutions. And I think groups are going to probably overlap quite a bit with, what used to be team sites, and maybe if they needed to do additional customization, we'd slide that from what used to be a team site to more of a solution site. So it's the new tools, it's the new evolution of those tools, and we'll just figure out where they fit when we're building out the solutions that people ask us for. So it's nice. It's nice in terms of having some of the pre-built stuff that people have been asking us for to be able to get it out there more quickly, though.
Ben, did you have a thought? I saw you raise your hand a few minutes ago.
Oh, no, I was checking how the lighting changes my video cam.
That's kind of awesome. Kind of awesome. Well, sweet. So another question that came into the group, and I think we'll do this one and then we'll hop over to third-party tools, but if you had to give one piece of advice, let's say maybe what are the top 1 to 2 things that you can do out of the box, or with our out-of-the-box solution or tool sets, is kind of what you said, Wes. What are the top 1 or 2 things that you can think of that you think are things that people might not be aware of, or things that they easily miss because they can't do them? So I have 2 at the top of my mind if you guys don't, so I'll just go first, give you guys a minute or 2 to think about it. But the top two things I would think, this one is funny. I showed this at the Ignite session and people loved it. And it's funny, I think it was just because they didn't know it existed. And that's the navigation settings, where you can change the navigation from Seattle to Oslo, and you can hide the quick launch on the page. And so if you want a site and you just want to have just the top navigation and no quick launch, you can go in to change the design, and it changes it for you, and it moves basically the quick launch to the top nav, but it gives you all of that space back. Every time I show that in a session, people are like, wow! And I think it's mostly because if you tried to do it in 2007 or 2010, it was painful as all get out. But I don't think they highlighted it well with names. So that's my top one. The other one that I think people don't really do a lot with is connected web parts. And that's where you can have values from web parts, one web part filtering to another. And so that could be where I might have a list of items, and I can, select an item, and then it's going to show me all of the documents and tasks associated with that project from a list. And so those are my top two things that I think that people, they're very simple things, but I think that people miss them a lot. So I'm going to pass it down to Wes, and he can tell us maybe some of his top things.
I still think that it's out of the box. It's real basic, but I still think views are totally underappreciated. Just the things that you can build in them, and the way that you can it's basically part of your. It doesn't have to be, but it's part of the connected web parts piece. It's we get these out of the box. It could be a group, could be a team site, whatever. And I would say there's a healthy chunk of users that just take it as it is and don't realize that you can add one or two columns and you can tweak a view and it becomes multiple times useful to them. Just the me view, for crying out loud, is something that over half the users that I sit down with had no idea that existed. So. That's probably my number one. When we talk about pure out-of-the-box stuff, of course, most of you are aware I'm doing a lot of talks about CSR and JS Link. So that's something where I think there's a tremendous amount of power in that gray area before we get into what I would call real development. So those are my two.
Awesome. What about you, Asif?
So this is really hard for me. You know that, right?
Because I only let you do two?
Yeah, it's really hard for me to pick two because I mean, off the top of my head, I can think of at least 6 or 7, and there's many, many, many more. That's what I've been doing for so many years now. But I'll give you maybe 3 or 4 if that's okay. Is that okay?
Yes, we'll cut you off on time. If I start clapping you off, that means you're cut off.
All right, you got it. A few things that when I do my sessions or I do my whole workshops for the whole day and I talk about no-code solutions that people appreciate. So first is Geo Location Column. I know, Ben, you've talked about that you saw some of this stuff the first time from some of my sessions. There's this column which lets you configure in such a way that you can actually see you can see the location web-based. I'm sorry, what am I trying to say over here? You can see the
location.
Right. You can see the location, let's say, of your resellers, of your of the units that you have around the world, or whatever else, directly embedded within a list or library or a web page. And it's just a very quick enablement that makes it happen. Many people don't know about this. I have lots of videos on geolocation on the web, so you can check that out. Another one that actually I think Ben is going to speak more about is search web parts. There's lots of awesome search web parts out there that you can use. And I'm not stealing it from you, don't worry. I just mention it. And Ben will tell you more about it, but I'm a big fan of search web parts. Don't make the beard mad. There's also these Excel Web Access web parts, which you can use to make dashboards, and you can get data from anywhere you want to make those dashboards. Some amazing stuff you could do with it. There's project management tools like Project 2013, Project Server. You can have that interface directly within SharePoint. Management of your resources, management of your projects go directly within SharePoint. Then there's so much more, but that's my top few that I wanted to mention. All right, Ben, you can talk about your search web parts now.
All right. Now, obviously, I'm a big fan of all the search web parts, and I think I do many sessions. In fact, I'm going to SharePoint Saturday Boston to Friday, or Saturday, obviously, whatever day this is now. Is it still Monday?
No,
right.
it's Monday earlier today. For those in the last panel, they missed it when Ben announced to us that he was having a really hard Monday, and we had to let him know that it was actually Wednesday. So.
Yeah. I'm trying to catch up. But yeah, honestly, search is and it's where it's going on top of that, right? The Office graph is technically search, and in fact, you can actually leverage your search web parts if you're on SharePoint Online, for example, to connect and search through the Office graph by adding the graph properties. So very exciting stuff. So my favorite solutions is some of the things that I've seen people do with it, which is I'm sorry about that, but how do you call that in English? The org chart, an org chart that's based on search, exactly. And what is the first thing? You go see a customer, you go tell them, or even you at the office, right? You're like, well, I can bring you SharePoint. We can have group collaboration, co-authoring of documents. It's available on all devices. Sir, but does it come with the weather web part? So tons of things like the weather, there's things you can build like a slider. People are always asking for sliders or carousel. And so you can build some really cool stuff with just search display templates. And you'll hear about the content search web part, you'll hear about the search results web part, but essentially they're both pretty much the same. The content search is only available in enterprise, and so you can use the search results to do the exact same thing. But I've seen people do responsive menus on pages. I've seen people create their entire navigations. So they remove the global navigation, and they've used their search results web part there instead to provide dynamic menus that are contextual to the person visiting the page. In fact, in most of our intranets that we build these days are 100% search driven. So very excited. For me, that is where I get the most value these days since 2013 with the no-code solutions. Before in 2010, 2007, SharePoint Designer was definitely my best friend, and so was XSLT and the content query web part.
I love it. All good questions. I think the next one I want to conquer, and this was asked in the audience, what are some of the favorite solutions that we have built? So I'll say within the last year or so, if you guys could tell us what is your favorite solution that you've built, as well as what did you use to build it? So is it just a browser-based solution? Did you use InfoPath, workflows? What were the pieces? So I'm going to start with Wes. If you could kind of just walk us through it and go through your example. Sorry, I could tell you were thinking, but I put Asif on the spot first last time.
It's all good. And so mine are going to get into that gray area. Honestly, it's a combination of building effective views and using a little bit of CSR. So the solution I was working with was basically the organization I'm doing work with. They needed people to work extra shifts, and instead of forcing people to just hey, you work this shift, they made all of their extra shifts available in a SharePoint list for people to sign up for. Well, the majority of those people aren't folks that sit at a PC all day. They're people that aren't familiar with the SharePoint functionality, opening up, edit an item and choose it and do whatever they want to do with it. So we needed to make our views more web-friendly rather than SharePoint-friendly. So we used a little bit of CSR to basically make build links into a view so that people could select items, basically mark themselves as taking a shift, rather than having them edit find the menu, edit the item, hit save, and move on. So it was just a little sliver of code using CSR, but it made it a heck of a lot more web friendly for folks. And there have been any number of examples based on that same approach that we used. Again, it's not rocket science. It's not something that took a lot of work, but at the end of the day, it made it a ton easier for our users.
Hey,
CSR is client-side rendering for those that were asking.
And what is client-side rendering?
That's
can you give us like a 3-minute kind of what it means? Because somebody who might not know what it means.
Yep. So client-side rendering and the way that what it is basically the way that SharePoint, or it's a generic web term actually, but it's the way that information is displayed to the screen, to the browser. So SharePoint has all of its data in lists and libraries, and what it's doing is it's presenting that information to the browser, and it's actually using JavaScript and other templates to basically lay over that data to make it presented in a certain way. Well, in 2013 in Office 365, Microsoft gave us a, quote, legal way to edit that, to basically go in there and tweak the way things are displayed. So we're tweaking it. We're going in there and saying, hey, instead of making it look like this, let's make it look like that. It's not changing the underlying data. It's just changing the way that it's being presented. So in the example that I was just talking about, rather than having a title field with the ellipses, the 3 dots that you click on and you get the drop-down menu, I just displayed the title, but I created an additional field that I built a link inside of, and they would click on that, and it would edit the form, or it would edit that item. Again, not a tremendous change in the functionality, but it's a significant change for users. So yeah, there's in the chat there I've got a bunch of references to what client-side rendering is and how to use it, and a bunch of references that we've got. Microsoft also added, they've been over the past, 4 to 6 months, adding a lot of examples to MSDN. So that page that I sent out, or that I put out there, I'm going to be adding a bunch of the Microsoft references that have popped up recently as well. So keep an eye on that page.
Awesome.
Asif,
do you want to go next and tell us about
Sure.
your favorite solution?
Yeah, what I do a lot these days, in the last couple of years, I would say, is I like to mentor and empower people to build their solutions. In my own solution, I'm not sure if they're super exciting anymore as they used to be before in the SharePoint Designer, InfoPath, and before days. But here's one that might be cool enough. So one was, making dashboards using Excel Web Access web parts. But in addition to making the dashboards and having the different ways of pulling data into Excel and then putting it out to SharePoint, also notifying the right people when a report is ready or a dashboard is ready. So for this one, we use Excel. I use Excel, Excel Web Access. And then after that, when the report goes into a library, a workflow fires up and looks for the person who created the report and looks up their manager. And that's a workflow. So look up, and this had to be a SharePoint Designer 2010 type of workflow, which a SharePoint Designer 2013 type of workflow was calling. So it's a little bit complex. But then once you pull in the right person, then go ahead and send an email to that person that the report is ready. So in this case, using SharePoint Designer 2010 workflow, 2013 workflow, Excel Web Access, and dashboarding. Yeah, and I thought was fairly cool. I think I've made cooler solutions in years past, but some of those tools are no longer available, like DataView web parts and passing parameters to do really cool stuff, and using InfoPath. All those things are kind of on their way out a little bit, unfortunately.
Awesome. Very cool. How about you, Ben?
All right, so I got a couple. No, for one of our customers, actually, it's because we always hear the oh yeah, InfoPath is, especially a couple of last year when they said that there would be no more InfoPath, and everybody went crazy. But I don't know what you guys' feeling are. I still recommend it, but I still give all the facts, right? So in 2003 SharePoint, did you worry about what was going to be there or not going to be there in SharePoint 2013? Nah, you figured something else would be there and you didn't really worry about it. So if InfoPath is going to stop being supported in 2023, and I know all the details about it, that it's not perfect for this, that it's no longer going to be added any new features on it, we still used it. And the way that we've used it was simply to have a, you know how most of the time you have many SharePoint users and very few SharePoint team members. So essentially, we wanted to manage the site creation in the environment. So people would have to fill out an InfoPath form on the web, and that form would have a workflow attached to it. So based on what they would have filled in the entry, using their people or group column, their person, right, and all the information that I have, we would then redirect the request to the manager, get it approved not, and then get it sent back to us as a simple entry in the SharePoint list. And then we would go create it manually, right? Of course, we could add more or add a developer that would automate some of the creation tasks and such, but that was an easy solution. Another solution was, again, with InfoPath, and this time some Nintex workflow stuff, where we created, it was a Nintex form, in fact. Here at ShareGate, I don't know if I should say this, but here at ShareGate, we get lunches at the office, so that's part of our perks if you want to see it that way. But essentially, every week I order what I want to eat at lunch, and they deliver at lunch what I wanted. So that's a whole SharePoint system. You go, you fill out a form, somebody has to enter the menu changes every now and then, changes the menu in the list, and all of that is automated through these workflows. And then at the end of the day, there's a TV by the cafeteria, and you see or everybody gets to see so everything is projected after to that TV using a single page. It's a page that updates itself, which is search-driven, that shows that in a cool way, that just shows the content of the list where everybody had entered, was approved, and all of the details was done. Then we would just see it there on a nice. And then lastly, of course, is everything that I've seen people do that is search-driven. Simple sliders or animated menus. Those have been some really, it's ridiculous, but it's the little thing. It's, what was the saying that our good friend Mark Miller used to say? The prettiest picture wins the funding. And that stuck with me for a long time. Because you can have the same thing, but if it looks better, it can increase adoption, and therefore those little things, those little add-ons, those really help us in the end. So search-related, forms, workflows, all together, that's been really helpful.
Yeah, it kind of plays into the one that I was thinking of, Ben. I built this solution with a group of people they had a team of 4 or 5, and they were getting cut down to a team of 2. And at the last company I worked at, it was in the competitive intelligence group, and they just basically provided information about competitors to our sales force. And they had to go and keep information, keep profile sheets, keep all of this data, and they had a whole file share of things. And they ultimately needed to be able to give sales teams online PDFs of different things. So I worked with them to set up a library system where we had a document library, and we used simple metadata to classify the PDFs when they got put in there. And then to Wes's point, we used views to kind of get them into some different ways that we could group them easily together. And then we used the, I cannot think of it now, and I should be able to think of it, the boxes across the top. Why can't I think of this, guys? The web part, like the getting started. I talk about this all the time.
Promoted links.
Promoted links. Okay. I can't believe I just forgot that. I have vacation brain. We used the promoted links web part to just basically link to different web part pages where we had the web parts on the page with different default views, so that the sales team could come in. They could see, do I want to look by company name? Do I want to look by region? Do I want to look by product? And it was all based on our metadata. And then on every page, we had the same format. We had the promoted links across the top. We had the web part there with the content. And then on the bottom, we had what we called the help button, which was, if I can't find what I want, how can I email the team to get it? And we rolled out that solution very quickly because it was just a list and some views and different things like that. But we spent a lot of time making it very pretty. So putting a lot of text on pages, using buttons, making it nice to interact with. And that is one of the most used sites to this day. And it was because it was just kind of simple to use. And that was one that we did not even go out of the browser to create. And it still provides a tremendous amount of detail and value. So I like to talk about that one because it shows how you can use just the simple things out of the box and get a nice simple win as a way to cut down on people requesting data from you and different things like that. So that was one of my examples. I think we have about 15 minutes left. So one of the things I noticed that throughout the entire session, we've really been mentioning a lot of things about third-party products. And so I'd love to get everyone's take and thoughts on what are some great third-party products and how do they fit into this out-of-the-box story? Like if we hit a wall with something we could do out of the box, should we look at development or should we look at a third-party product? And maybe who are some of the players? We'll give Ben a pass. Everyone knows Ben works at ShareGate, so we'll let him not talk about ShareGate because others will, I'm sure. But if we want to maybe go ahead and talk through some of those pieces and just talk about how do third-party products fit into this entire story. So I'll start with Asif on this one.
Oh boy, so same thing with us also. We're also a product company also, and it's hard for me to not mention our own product. Is it okay if I mention it?
Yeah, go ahead and mention your own product. I was just giving Ben crap. Go ahead and mention your own product, Asif.
Okay. So one of the things that makes or breaks SharePoint is, of course, the usage or adoption of SharePoint. I believe that our product really helps with adoption and user training through the Visual SP help system. The Visual SP help system for the farm and also Visual SP help system, the app, which I'll be demonstrating some of that stuff tomorrow as well in a webinar, by the way. Anyway, but aside from this one, some of the things that I've focused a lot on over the years for no-code solutions have been forms and workflows. And it's okay to mention a few of the favorites. Is that okay to mention specific names?
Yeah, go ahead and mention specific names.
Okay.
This is,
All right. So because I've been into this market for so long, I've kind of researched and dug in to see which players are doing a really good job, And the ones that surfaced up in both of those stories quite a bit have been Nintex, obviously. They have a good price point and a good story, good visual aspect also for the users to be able to easily build solutions on top of. K2 has been off and on. I'll be honest, I think in the beginning when there was no other SharePoint workflow, K2 was monster. It was awesome. Then it kind of took a hit here and there. I think they're now on the upswing again. They're doing a really good job with their K2 forms and workflows. And then after that, of course, we have Agile Point. I don't know if many people know about Agile Point, but they look at a much bigger story, a much bigger BPM, business process management suite of things. A lot of their new stuff is built on HTML5, so that's really good stuff. On top of that, you have Formotus, I believe that's the company's name. They do a pretty good job with forms. I've not really looked at it too much. And looking away from the actual regular solutions, there's another company in Europe that I got to know a few years back. They make what's called workflow extensions for, like workflow activities basically for SharePoint Designer. And that company, I'll type it in here, it's called, believe it or not, HairPoint. They do a pretty good job also with workflow extensions. So there's that. There's one more I'm going to mention that I've done good work with. I like these guys. It's concept searching. So metadata is key, and concept searching lets you extract that metadata automatically from places instead of having users put everything in. So you define the rules and everything else ahead of time, and it just extracts the metadata, makes it searchable, makes it navigable, and does a really good job with surfacing that stuff. I'm sure there's more, and I apologize for any vendors out there who I didn't mention if your name. There's lots of good tools out there, but that's a few that come to mind right now.
How do you go about looking at tools, Asif? So when do you know if you should use them? And I love all the tools that you mentioned as well. Yeah. But when do you look at it and say, oh, I should use a tool for this? Do you have any criteria or anything like that that you look at?
Sure. I'll tell you a very quick story about this first. There was a day I think about 6 or 7 years ago when I actually saw an executive. I don't want to mention which one. Everybody knows him, that person. He answered at a partner forum. No, not a partner. It was a customer forum. Somebody asked this question saying, hey, this functionality is missing. Are you guys looking to add this functionality into SharePoint? And the answer was simply, this is a partner opportunity. There's lots of those partner opportunities out there, and I sometimes feel that they're made, those partner opportunities, on purpose. So whenever, for example, in workflows, you want to go beyond your workflow and you want to go into some SAP system or some old, I don't know, even Lotus Notes, or get stuff from whatever else. It's more of a business process management, and it's not just SharePoint Designer that's going to let you do that. You want to go into other site collection. You want to do something else. Those are the boundaries that you have to cross with a different product. You can't do it with SharePoint Designer unless you put some coding behind it. Same thing for forms and other stuff as well. Whenever you want to cross those boundaries, you have to look outside. And those boundaries become pretty apparent automatically once you're making your solutions, obviously. There's only so much you could take those things, and then after that, you have to go for a true enterprise solution to a third party many times.
Yep. Very cool. We have about 8 minutes. Asif or Wes, do you guys have any thoughts on this one? I'm sorry, not Asif. Ben or Wes, do you guys have any thoughts on this one?
Go ahead, Wes.
I guess when I started thinking about third party, it comes back to the skill sets again. Where I'm at, we've got a good chunk of, we have a handful of developers, so they are eager to jump in and do some of these things when we need custom forms. If we didn't have any developers that had that skill set, and we knew we were going to be building lots of forms, I would be pushing a lot harder for something like an Intex or a K2. So I think it really depends on the situation. It's, like I think Ben was pointing out, we joke about InfoPath going away, but it's going to be around for a while yet. And if you've already got an investment in InfoPath and you've got folks that are familiar with the tool set, keep using it, until there's a clear-cut best practice next step. So again, those, we like to joke about the it depends, answer to what do I do in SharePoint, but it depends on what tool sets are available to you. It depends on what third-party products are available to you. That's what I think about when I think about third parties. But there's certainly some good ones. There's certainly some good ones out there. There's some that are kind of a dud too. So you need to do some testing to make sure that it works and it works in your environment, and even more importantly, that you can uninstall it properly when you need to, because some of these products are nasty, sticky, and you just can't get rid of them.
Bob Fox put a great comment in the chat window, and it's one of the best ones that you can do, that basically says ignore the marketing fluff, ignore all the fancy shiny buttons, dig in and see what the reputation is and what they have for support. And I would think that that is excellent advice for doing it, because you definitely do. It's not hard. You do not have to go far to find someone with an opinion about something in the community. So it's very easy to get, we're very quiet, but there's also, we're pretty easy to get talking. So you definitely should look that around. I think that is some excellent advice from Bob out there. All right, how about you, Ben? What do you think?
No, I mean, I'll skip the one I work at, obviously, but no, I usually look at, I have to solve the business need, whatever that case is. Big fan of Nintex for sure. We've even gone as far as partnering with them, so definitely one that we really like. And it's not because, any other reason other than the fact that it was a very similar vision that we've had, which is the same thing that I look for in products. Is it simple to use? Does it solve the problem? Obviously, do I need like 20 billion hours of training to start using it? And can we afford it based on the budget that we have? It's very, sometimes it could be some other products, and it has been in the past. Depending on what our customers have needed, we would go and get and establish and look at them, test them, always have tests. You don't just, like you said, don't look at the marketing stuff. You want to download a trial or ask for one, and don't just get the demo that works, because it works. You want to do a pilot, if possible, in a sample environment, whatever the case. But I think, as I've pretty much mentioned, a good long list of products. I would say also look at, well, now Codeplex is pretty much not there, but there's a tool that I still use, the search query tool, that is very, very nice. That it's a free tool that allows you to look at your, if you're going to build search-driven solution with the search web part, you definitely want to be looking into that as well to see what are the search results and what can you play with without having to check in the page and publish and really go through all of that aspect. But otherwise, the list of tools, I usually start with Google, put in the things, and then I'll ask around the community. There's tons of communities. There's IT Unity here, and I ask around, it's like, hey, have you used this before? Do you like it? No. And then I do a trial if I like it. Usually how it goes.
Yeah. And I know we teach Ben about it, so he didn't say anything about ShareGate. The chat room was talking about it. ShareGate is actually my go-to tool. I use it all of the time. I think it's great for migrations and moving everyday stuff around. So I give Ben a lot of crap about it, but I absolutely love his tool. And I know Asif was even saying in there he uses it as well. So there's a lot of us that give that thumbs up. So we'll tease him about mentioning it, but still a very cool product, and you should check it out. So that is really awesome. I think we are wrapping up on time today, guys. We have had a great we've had a great time just chatting together. I hope that you guys enjoyed this session. It was a lot of fun, guys. I think we should definitely do it again with this group. So you guys have a wonderful wonderful rest of the afternoon. 2 sessions from now, a couple of us are joining again, and we're doing one on the future of forms. So Asif and I will definitely be on that one, and we look forward to having you guys there. So thanks, everybody.